how do I automate as much as conceivably possible? Because I realized before I even started my firm that the technology today is just amazing.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Automated Lawyer Podcast. I am one of your hosts, John Fritz, and today we are joined with our co-host, Dan Schnurbusch. Dan, what is happening?
How's it going, guys? Not much. We had an interesting start to the morning here. We had a frog hop game going on with my family upstairs. So it is always exciting in the Schnurbusch household. I have 4 little kids. There's always all kinds of entertainment going on, and they're home for the summer right now. But other than that, just automating stuff and trying to get some sleep.
I can relate to that. I'm super pumped. One of the reasons is you and I decided to start this podcast. Both of us have our own law firms. We talk a lot about tech and AI and different automations and different things that are going on in the legal space. And it just makes sense to record it and talk about it with others that can hopefully find some value. So I know today we kind of have a general topic picked for our first episode here. And that is talking about our client journeys from basically start to finish and the various tech that is involved in each of our client journeys. And there is a lot of stuff happening. Do we want to start out and maybe you want to start talking about your client experience, or do you want to maybe talk a little bit about your firm just generally?
Sure. Yeah. I guess why don't we do a little introduction on ourselves and our firms generally, and just so people, I guess, kind of know who we are. But so my name is Dan Schnurbusch. I'm an estate and probate attorney out of St. Charles, Missouri. Run a practice out here, started in 2020. And from the very beginning, I was obsessed with the technology, the automation. How do I automate as much as conceivably possible? Because I realized before I even started my firm that the technology today is just amazing. I mean, what you can do is really, really amazing. And it was just leaps and bounds ahead of what we were doing where I was at, and became obsessed with this idea of building a more automated law firm that didn't lose the quality client experience, or in fact allowed for a better client experience, which has been an interesting side effect and part of the point of automating. So that's kind of where I come from, is this background of estate and probate. We run kind of a small boutique firm right now, which is built for my personal lifestyle. They let me spend more time with my kids and keep something that's pretty easy to keep going. So that's where I'm at. I've been working on putting together some Facebook group and some other things to help people learn more about technology, because I just love it. But those are some of the things that I've been working on, and a little bit about me. How about you, John? Tell us more about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm John Fritz. I started my law firm about 6 years ago. It's definitely evolved in the last couple of years. We are one of the very few law firms in St. Louis that only does probate work. So probate work is our bread and butter. We love everything about probate work. We love helping clients get through the probate process. And just like you, Dan, we also love incorporating technology and any and all automations possible to reduce the amount of human work that's involved in our law firm. So I know you and I had talked before about this quest that you had one time, or at least this kind of general theme of creating a law firm that was fully automated, right? Where there was almost very little human input. I love that idea. I think maybe in 5 years that could be a reality. But I guess what we're trying to do at my firm is incorporate as much tech as possible. And then obviously just have great team members to supplement the technology. And, we're constantly, we talk about creating an unbeatable client experience. That's one of our core values.
Right.
That's something that we are obsessing about. And tech plays a big part of that.
Yeah. And that's been just an interesting realization that I had. It's only been in the last couple of years that it's gotten to the point where it's had a noticeable effect. And that is, automation is one thing. It's like, well, I can work faster, we can be more efficient, but there's a lot of knock-on effects that I don't think everybody fully appreciates. And the main one is that you can be there more for your client, you and your whole team. If it doesn't take you hours to prepare all the documents that you need, if you can do that in a click, well, that's that much more time that you can respond to that text message or respond to that email or get that call back, follow up with that lead or respond to a phone call. And those are the things that I think clients care the most about, is being in a fairly high level of communication. Setting expectations is important too, But, I get clients
Yeah.
call all the time and they're like, I called my lawyer. I sent him an email. I haven't heard from him in 3 months and he's not responding to anything. Like, that's a problem. And it's like the number one bar complaint that anybody gets. And it's so easy to, automate around some of those problems, and the better you get at automating things, the more you can free yourself up, free your team up to really deliver that A+ client experience.
Yeah. And some of the things you said, I mean, when it comes to, building a law practice in 2024, it baffles me the number of law firms that are either starting out or that are in existence or just really old and towards the end of the life when it comes to the law firm cycle. But it baffles me, or the lack of technology that's involved in their firms. Firms that are doing millions and millions of dollars in revenue a year, and they're not even using a case management system, or they're managing leads on a spreadsheet in Google, right? It's unbelievable. If you just spent a little bit of time and weren't afraid to delve into the tech space. I mean, there's all levels of tech, right? I consider myself to be still kind of entry level. I put you, Dan, in the guru category of the next level. I think I'm trying to make it to the moon and you're already on Mars.
You're too, I don't know if you give yourself enough credit, but go on. I hear you.
Anyway, so I think there's a lot of areas for growth for law firms. And even I look at my own tech stack and my own client experience, and I'm constantly thinking to myself, what's one area where we can remove 5 minutes or remove 10 minutes of human time, right? Of team time. And, when you're doing hundreds of cases a year, 5 minutes ends up being a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
So it's constantly doing that evaluation. But yeah, then there's always areas for improvement.
Yeah. And the biggest thing, in addition, there's a time saving element. And that I think is really important, especially on the low hanging fruit, like simple things like document automation. Like, you're talking on the order of saving hours per file. The other thing that matters that I have found is huge is saving mistakes. So like email, we get in emails from Missouri CaseNet. It's our online court filing system. The court sends us email notifications when anything happens. Document gets filed, hearing gets scheduled, whatever. But the problem that we ran into is I run a very small firm. There's only a couple people and we're watching, an email inbox that gets hundreds of emails a day. So there were a couple times early on where, I missed a court hearing. Fortunately, a lot of it's uncontested probate. So it's not a big deal, but if you're a litigator or something, missing a court hearing is a big problem. And I was like, I can't be having these kind of mistakes. I can't be missing, calendaring. My paralegal, my assistants are assigned to work on this stuff, but sometimes stuff just falls through the cracks when you have a lot of volume and a small team. And it was ripe for automation. So I built an automation that uses ChatGPT and it reads our court emails and schedules everything automatically. And once I got it right, it's never missed a beat. So now we just don't make that mistake anymore. So did it take a long time to calendar a court email? No, it takes, 10 seconds in Google Calendar, but we're never going to make that mistake again because of this automation. It's the time savings. But for me, a big piece of it is just not forgetting to do things and not making mistakes is the other half of the equation.
Yeah. And that's one thing. And before we kind of get into our topic, when it comes to document automation, like that's one thing that was super important for us, which was creating a document automation platform where the same data goes in and the same name gets spread across some productions over 100 documents, right?
Yeah.
The same decedent's name, right? So you don't have misspelled names. Either you have all misspelled names throughout all the documents or you have none. And 99% of the times it's none.
Right.
So definitely when it comes to checks and balances and reducing the ability to have human error is really important with tech and automation. But let's transition a little bit. Let's talk about, I'm going to focus a little bit on your client experience and the different tech stack that you have involved from kind of the minute the caller calls in until basically you're done, you're hitting archive or you're closing the file.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll take it kind of, front to back. So a lot of our clients come in from Google search, SEO, Google My Business, referrals, some Google ads, mostly just Google organic. Get a lot of phone calls in, a lot of form submissions. Most of it's phone calls though. And that's going through our receptionist. So again, small team. I don't hire a full-time receptionist. I hire Smith AI. They're a virtual receptionist.
I use Smith AI, yeah.
Yeah, they're
As a
pretty
backup,
good.
yeah.
I like them pretty well. Yeah, I know John has an in-house person. but they do a pretty good job for my needs. So they have a Calendly scheduling form. So like they can help assign people the correct booking type. They're answering the phone. It's always a live human. That was something that I decided from the first day is like, I don't want people, especially for their first impression of the firm, I want them talking to a human. Now they're asking some basic screening questions. So making sure they're at least a decent fit for the firm. Like, if they're the right kind of case or are there assets in Missouri, things like that. And if everything looks good and checks out, they schedule them. And using that Calendly scheduling software, they go right onto my calendar or whoever's taking the intake call. They immediately start getting automated emails, just kind of introducing them to the firm based on the practice area. So if it's like a probate case, they're getting emails saying like, hey, welcome to the firm. Here's the information you need to know about probate and all kinds of stuff, kind of teaching them some stuff, sending them out to, YouTube videos and PDFs and helpful things like that they can get started with in the probate process, and kind of leading up to that first initial consultation.
Yeah, and I think that really awesome and important, especially when you have a caller calling in and they've chosen to call your firm, right? Based upon your advertising, your marketing, your referral. But they call in, they get to talk to a live person, and then immediately they're getting stuff sent to them. That's information. I think that's huge. We introduced something similar like that in our firm about a year ago, and it's been a game changer when it comes to keeping that person from calling other firms.
Right.
They call us, they get information, and that's been super helpful from at least informing the client about the process and cutting down on that consultation time.
Just having them a little bit educated when they're coming in so they kind of understand, well, here's the different kinds of probate or what have you. So they have a little bit of education, but also absolutely like getting people on the calendar immediately. Now in some high demand kind of practice areas like personal injury and stuff, you may want to be trying to convert them on that first call. And maybe in a perfect world, you want to do that in probate too. But, for us, we've found that getting them on the schedule and as long as it's within the next, day or two, the show up rates are usually pretty high. So that has helped a lot, but getting that information to them. And then basically the way it works for us is they get into a consultation with me. We've gotten a lot more filtering. So especially since you and I last talked, my calendar has gotten down to much better quality leads through some of the filtering questions we ask. But now we're talking to them during that meeting. I'm filling out a questionnaire during that call in Lawmatics, which is our CRM system. But that form is where we collect all the data we need during that consult to create the engagement, to create the first invoice. And, depending on what they want to do or what we want to do, if we want to retain or if we're referring them, we basically just check a different box on the form. And let's say we're retaining. If we hit that form, basically they get immediately texted and emailed an engagement agreement that is customized to the case. So based on the boxes we filled out on the Lawmatics form, that writes the engagement for us. So we don't have to go in there and fiddle with the engagement. It's like conditional logic. It is customized to the case type and the fee structure based on the boxes we checked. So that goes out immediately during the call. They can e-sign that, texted to them, emailed to them. So that's kind of their experiences. They're seeing from the get-go, okay, this guy, is very fast. I'm not going to have to wait around a bunch. They sign that for electronic signature, and then they get sent their onboarding invoice. Again, instantly texted to them, emailed to them, credit, debit, bank transfer. They can pay in a variety of different ways. And then, in a perfect world, they have signed and paid within minutes of the initial consult, right? So that's kind of the way that we do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it seems to work pretty well during that initial glide path. How do you guys handle it?
Yeah. So, we're very similar when it comes to basic setups, a little bit different on the tools we use, but caller calls in, they talk to our internal intake specialist, and she does the intake and calendars immediately for a consult if it fits my criteria, right? For initial consultation. Immediately upon when she submits the initial intake form, we use Jot form. It's kind of what we started with. And so data is collected there. It's submitted, you clicked on a button online and it pushes it into Pipedrive, which is our leads management system. Pipedrive automatically creates a new deal and customer and starts pushing materials to the client immediately upon that submission. So either if my intake specialist is on the phone and somebody else calls, then we have Smith AI uses as our backup. They have the same procedures in place where they use this exact same forms to collect data and get it into Pipedrive for a new deal. So once we have the initial consultation in Pipedrive, we have different columns. So as we move our cases along for our leads management, so we have a caller calls in, and then we have each column within that kind of Kanban board in Pipedrive has automations internally with it. So if the deal is moved into one, it sends a message that says, hey, we just tried calling you. Give us a call back where we want to talk to you if we can't get a hold of them. Or we have one that automatically pushes out links to schedule their own consultation, right? If we can't do it on the phone ourselves. But when it comes to signing clients up, I think you're right. I think it's super important to have that representation agreement and payment link ready to go immediately, either on the phone or immediately after, right? And I got into DocuSign power templates like early on in my practice, and I've never been able to get away just because I've just built them out. So within Pipedrive, we basically have a templated email within Pipedrive. So we just select the one we want. It automatically loads the message to the client, the links for payment and the power form for that specific probate type. And then all I do is hit send, and boom, it's to the client. And they're able to click on the links to make that initial payment, and then also send the representation agreement through DocuSign.
I think those are two of the biggest low-hanging fruit during that initial sequence. I have a lot of attorneys reach out to me asking about software and how do we deal with this workflow. And especially when you're a new attorney getting started, you got to be able to get people to pay you. Make it easy as possible for them to sign an engagement and pay you. Because like when you're first starting, it's like your mortgage, your dinner is going to be dependent on you getting people to pay you. So make that part easy. And the software out there now, that it makes it so much smoother to be able to do that. So that electronic signature for your engagement, make that easy. The electronic payment options is critical, especially when you're doing like B2C or business to consumer areas of law, like divorce or other family or estate planning, probate, criminal, personal injury. Very, very important to get those engagements and the payments made as soon as you can. But yeah, it's really cool what you can automate now. The thing to take away from that in like our setup, literally the only thing that I actually have to do is fill out the questionnaire. The entire rest of that system is completely automated. So Smith, the setup of the file in our CRM, the sending of the engagement, the sending of the invoice, the conversion after the signing and payment, they convert to a client and we push them over into Airtable, which is our operations platform. That whole sequence is automated. The only thing I have to do is talk to the client and check some boxes on the form. The rest happens like magic, and it's beautiful and awesome. And that's where technology is at these days.
Yeah. I mean, I think especially those lawyers that are starting their own practice, you don't have a whole lot of automation, right? You know, everybody kind of gets in the game and it's, oh, what CRM do I need? What case management do I need? I think it's most important to start on the front end, right? Because signing up clients is the most important thing when you're starting a law practice, or 6 years or 10 years into a law practice. Yeah. It is literally the most important thing in the entire law firm is signing up new clients, right? So making that process super simple and super easy and removing yourself from it, right? I mean, you know, doing the initial consultations, you know, you and I still both do that. I know there's law firms obviously where they hire people to do that, other lawyers, but you know, not quite there yet. Hopefully in the next year, maybe. But yeah, I mean, just, you know, the automations is huge. So let's move on a little bit into once you sign that client up, okay, getting it through the process of getting the information. I would assume you'll use the same information that you started with, right? That on your intake that pushes through the entire system, right? So let's start with once you sign the client up, they sign the rep agreement, they make that initial payment. What happens next in your system and processes?
Yeah, so they get through Zapier is kind of our automation / data mover / omni tool. We use Zapier to push a lot of the data from Lawmatics over into Airtable, which is, you know, for a lot of attorneys, they might be like, well, what the heck's Airtable? Airtable is actually a giant platform outside of the legal space. Like you look at tools like Monday.com and Asana and Airtable, like these are huge companies that have millions and millions of companies use them around the world, but they're little known to the law practice industry because we have a lot of tools that are at least ostensibly created for us, like Locus and Clio in my case and so on. But in my opinion, there is a tremendous amount of power in these more flexible industry agnostic tools. So we use Airtable, which, you know, we basically bring all of our data in there. We have a tool called Fill Out, which is our forms data collector form. I know you have jot form. Basically, the client gets sent, as soon as they convert, they get sent a welcome email. It's like, hey, welcome to the firm. Here's a bunch of first steps you should take in your probate case. And they get a link to that fill out questionnaire to kind of give us the rest of the information. So, we talked about these 4 heirs on the phone. Now we need their addresses. Now we need their, whatever. And they fill in all that extra information. They give us the death certificate. They can upload that. All that goes directly into our Airtable system. And fill out works well to kind of set up the related properties there. Because basically what we've done is built a bespoke custom case management system in Airtable. So fill out really helps to pull the data in the right structure. And from there, it's just, we get some automated tasks to our team to say, hey, make sure that everything's formatted correctly. Make sure we do any back-end research we need to do. Like, do we need to go pull a deed or, get a Kelley Blue Book value on a car or something? So we do all that. And then we have a button. We just click a button that says generate the initial documents. And when we click that button, it generates the stack of initial pleadings. So that's, the petition for letters or the small estate affidavit or whatever. There's no double data entry. You just click a button and it happens. And it's about 80, 90% ready to go from that point. And then we click another button and it gets sent for electronic signature to the client instantly. So, from an operations standpoint, like I was saying earlier, like it just doesn't take a lot of time to onboard a new case. What used to take hours, we can onboard a new probate case in 5 minutes and get the documents sent out for signing. In 5 to 10 minutes, which is really, really cool. So that's kind of what the first couple steps look like, especially in our probate cases, of getting those initial pleadings prepped out and ready for signature.
Yeah, the double data entry is a killer, right? When it comes to time spent. And for the most part, we don't have a true double data entry, but we do have data that starts at the beginning, which is about half the data, or maybe let's say 25% of the data. And then the remaining 75% is entered in later. So we definitely have some work to do on our end. We still use a fillable PDF, and that's one of the things at the top of my list when it comes to getting the information from the client into the system that's generated basically automatically. And the reason we haven't done pushing an online form to the client and having them enter information is I'm really particular about what data goes into my system. And I'm worried about them putting people who aren't actually heirs because some people just put a bunch of people on there, or putting assets that are not assets.
Yeah.
I know there's ability, you just clean it up on the back end, right? Instead of, having to do it, which is probably much faster than the way we're doing it. But, that's one of our big areas of improvement right now, is to reduce that data entry time, especially when it comes to that new data from the client.
Yeah. And I will say, definitely, it depends on the client. Some clients are great at it. They'll get everything in perfectly the first time. That is rare. At least what we found, that there definitely needs to be some cleanup of the data when it comes in. They might list people who aren't relevant, or they might categorize them incorrectly. They might say, oh, this is one thing, but when it's really another. But you're absolutely right. I think usually my experience has been that the data polishing and formatting is pretty quick, especially if you know generally what's supposed to be in there. We do a lot of texting in our firm because we just find clients like texting. If we email them, we might not hear back for 2 weeks, but if we text them, we're going to hear back usually within 20 minutes. And we can usually be like, hey, you submitted this. Can we get this tightened up? Can you explain this a little more? That often alleviates those issues. But that's what I mean, though, is that because all this other stuff is so automated, it gives us a lot of time to spend more time talking and texting and communicating with the client, which I think makes them feel better and feel heard. And so that's kind of what we strive for on that, through that part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're 100% right on. Tech only gets you so far, and having that human element, reassurance, making sure that, that they're heard and that their concerns are addressed in real time is important. Let me back up to I started talking about my process. So once our client signs a representation agreement through DocuSign and then makes that initial payment, their deal is dragged to the last column in Pipedrive. And once that happens, there's I don't know if it's a Zapier and make combination, but what happens is it creates a new deal automatically, or a new project in Filevine. So we're currently using Filevine, and pulls all the data from that original jot form throughout Pipedrive into Filevine, creates new customers, creates new contacts, creates pretty much everything based upon that data set. A very specific templated project in Filevine is created for that specific probate type.
Mhm.
And which then triggers task flows, which has our file clerk assigned to that, sets up the file, they move the phase into client portal status. And then what happens is it automatically sends a text message to the client, inviting them to their client portal. So we use case status. I'm a huge fan of case status. I talk about them all the time because I just think that what they're doing is awesome. And my clients absolutely rave about it. So they get a text, they go to their client portal, they can download an app on their phone to access the portal, or they can log in on their URL. Basically what happens is within case status, they can see all the phases that have been built out for that project type. So if it's a small estate affidavit, they're seeing their 6 or 7 phases for small estate affidavit. Same thing we're seeing in FileVine. As the case progresses and we move that phase, which is usually triggered by automated task flows behind the scenes, right? Where those phases are moving when tasks are completed, the phase changes automatically in case status. So the
Nice.
client knows automatically without us having to tell them, hey, your documents are filed. Hey, we sent your documents for signature. Hey, the court has issued an order. Hey, it's time to close your case, right? All those things. Plus, it's basically multi-layered. So you have most of our automations, once the client becomes a client, are automated through case status. So you can automate at any phase when it comes to messages, checklists, all this stuff. That's, so we're not asking the client for, when a case closes, we're not asking them for, oh, can you provide bank statements for a full estate, right? There's an automated checklist when the phase changes. It automates the checklist, sends them a message and asks them to upload things. And then we don't check that off until it's done. So we know like those things are done based upon our automated checklists within that specific phase. I mean, there's just so many things you can do with it.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to investigate that more. That's pretty cool because we kind of do a similar thing, but it's more through just emails. Like for most of our clients, we don't have a full-blown portal. My thinking was, well, let's keep it in the channel that they're used to and comfortable with. We'll send them emails. We send them text messages. So they get, at each stage of the case or when each new big thing happens, like letters of administration issue or a hearing is scheduled or something like that, they get automatically emailed and texted the information on that. And at a big phase change, it's like, here's what you need to expect and what's coming up next. And here's what you need to focus on. But I could definitely see there, especially if there's a way of putting in like a Domino's pizza tracker or something like that, where you can see how your case is progressing and here's what it looks like start to finish. Because we still do get questions, like even though it's in the email, even though it's in the text message, it's like, what do I do next or something like that. So very cool.
We almost never get those questions, honestly. I almost never have somebody who calls and says or sends a message. And so we actually don't even use email at all. We use email through when it comes to automations through Pipedrive, right? There's an email inbox that everybody in my team has access to. And then it's all pushed from that. So everybody can see their client responses and stuff, when it comes to the leads management. But when it comes to clients, we don't use any email whatsoever. Everything is quarterbacked through messages through case status. And they know you're working through case status from that initial email. But once you get into the platform, it has your logo and all your stuff on there, right? But there is a messages tab within case status. So every time they send us a message, we only communicate through the messages tab, that and phone calls. And for the most part, clients, it's not the client who schedules calls because they can go in and see exactly what's going on. And it's funny you say that because sometimes I mention that. I'm like, we have the Domino's pizza tracker for probate cases and people laugh. And I'm like, no, but seriously, it's pretty amazing because everybody wants to see what's happening in real time these days.
That's really nice. We have a portal that we've started building out in the last couple of months, but it's more geared toward like mass filer clients. We've got, with these Camp Lejeune cases and stuff like that, where a lot of them are coming from the same place. And we have a portal where they can log in and monitor the status of, 30 cases at once. But I guess we're a step behind you there in the Domino's pizza tracker. That is definitely on the agenda of how can we really bring this up. And I think you're kind of the exemplar there of what can be done at the highest levels of, especially for probate, but really that kind of thing could be done for any case type, especially for any process-driven case type. I'm thinking things like trademarks or anything where you're moving through an agency or filing something that is more process-driven and less project-driven, like if that distinction makes sense. Litigation cases, especially ones that aren't like cookie cutter, like car accident. Those cases can have so many different variables and so many different documents, and who knows what the legal issues are going to be. It could turn a lot of different ways. Whereas in cases like uncontested probate or trademark, these types of tools can be really powerful for creating that smooth depiction and visualization of the process. So many people like, oh, I was in probate for 3 years. And when I hear that, I'm like, why? I mean, I don't.
Or who was your probate lawyer is what I have.
what happened there that turned into that? There's always some excuse, but but anyway, that's so cool. We'll have to explore that more at our firm.
Yeah, and like there's other client I know there's some other competitors and client portals out there that people use that are very similar, but having that centralized place is really has been, really important to our firm because all of our team members, we all see the same communications from the client, right? We don't have any siloed emails, right? We all see the same stuff. Everybody knows their role and who's supposed to respond to what cases. And it just makes things really easy throughout the representation.
Yeah.
So that's really important. But our goal is creating an unbeatable client experience for probate cases, right? And, once the process and the system has been built and there's obviously room for improvement. I mean, I'm still using a fillable PDF at one step in my case, which I'm working on. There's always room for improvement. What we're striving to do is close the gap in time. It's not only being super communicative, having that communications and information platform and constantly having the client informed, but it's that time. So I'm obsessed with the time gap, right? From start when the client signs the rep agreement to when they receive their initial documents. And not just that, but to when the case is filed. My goal is to have no one else be better than me and my firm when it comes to being fast, when it comes to signing a client up to filing their documents with the court. Like that,
Yeah.
I want that to be in real time, almost same day is my goal, right? And I said that's almost impossible. But if we had e-signatures with the courts, we could probably do cases same day. But we're a couple of weeks or whatever it is in the timeline. But that's what I'm obsessed with right now and using tech to close that gap.
Oh, I think that's great. One project on my to-do list is to reduce that to a KPI, get it set up in our system where we're getting, I started setting it up, but it's not done yet, of tracking time between case conversion and the initial filing, and then aggregating that across all cases and showing it as a KPI on our dashboard, which is one of the things that Airtable is really, really good about, is customizable dashboards and stuff like that and customizing KPIs. So I don't know if you guys do anything like that, but I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and I'm totally with you, is making that as quick as possible because, you hear so many horror stories, especially about probate. But one thing that I've kind of tried to drill into people is that it doesn't have to be that bad. It's just that a lot of people don't put in the legwork of building an efficient system. But so I think that's really cool what you're doing there.
And I think that specifically with probate, it's one of the reasons I went in to basically do 100% probate is because it's always been kind of an add-on to a lot of times estate planning, right? You do estate planning and then it makes sense to help people with probate because you have the same clients, it's kind of, you're using the same pool. But, it's always kind of been that like kind of add-on, like, oh, well, we do a little probate, we do this, we do a little probate. And so for the most part, people they're not spending the time to build out the systems because the large majority of their practice is not focused on probate. So why spend the time when it's like that, right? That's when I think you fall into those issues when it comes to people of, cases that sit on the desk for 3 months before anything happens because those processes are not built out in the system. So you have Airtable as your CRM. And what are you using for post-production? Are you using a whole lot of tech on the back end to follow up with clients?
You mean like after the case is over, or?
Yeah. I mean, do you have a drip campaign that you're using?
There's definitely opportunity for improvement on that side. And I see that as almost more of a marketing thing of like, your case is over. How can we keep top of mind for referrals for, like, let's say you did do, estate planning or some other practice area that you wanted to expand the client value or something like that. I think we do have like a couple of like email campaigns, and there's a newsletter that goes out regularly to anybody who's on our list. But for us specifically, it definitely is an area I think that we could explore more of, doing more follow-up. Now we do have, during the immediate aftermath, we do have thanks for working with our firm. Here's a link to our Google review page. And that's one of the things that I attribute to our ability to generate. I think we're close to 100 5-star Google reviews now, which is cool for us. So I think that's kind of what all we have on the back end. And that's all just run through, I believe it's either Lawmatics or Airtable is sending that closing email. I'd be interested to hear if this is something that you've explored more or leveraged more on the back end, or what are you guys doing?
I mean, so we created kind of a campaign, an email campaign, but I'm always looking for a new tech tool that's better than just kind of the email, the classic, here's my email campaign that's automated. I mean, you can fully automate it. I think we have once a week, there's something sent out to everybody on the list, whether it's our 5-star reviews or some probate topic, informational stuff, just to keep them, hey, we do probate work, right? But I think that there's, I think there's a gap there, and I think there's something that can be done, and I think it's worth exploring on the back end when it comes to, having the client be an advocate for a referral source, right? From that standpoint. But
Yeah.
let me ask you this question. So when it comes to 5-star reviews, when you're doing that, I know you're sending, and we have an automation sent, in case status as well, that sends them a review, a review request, and then, with a link and everything. But, recently I feel like it's somewhat like it's pulling teeth almost when it comes to getting the client to actually do the process, right? And it's like, they will literally say the nicest possible things about us. Case status has an NPS score, right? It asks the client throughout each phase to rate us on a scale of 0 to 10 on how we're doing in the case. So we have a real-time pulse on the clients. And so we have clients who are giving us 10 out of 10s consistently throughout the entire case. I think our average NPS score for all of our cases since from the very beginning is about 9.48 right now for client satisfaction. So super important, but we're having great client experiences. But then when we go to ask for the Google review, yeah, no, I'll get to it. Have you experienced that at all or no?
I think it's easier when you are either on, jumping on the phone with them or having some kind of physical manual interaction with them. It is easier to do because I think there's a little bit of social pressure. Whereas I think people, they get an email. Some of them are going to take you up on that. A certain percentage, especially the happiest ones, are going to take you up on that. But a lot of people are just, they get another email and they just hit, oh, I'll get around to it. They don't, it's just like I don't know if they put it as much thought into it. So I try to impress upon people, especially if I'm on the phone with them prior to closing, like how important those things are to us and stuff like that. We got a lot through our estate planning cases because there's a real natural and easy one at the time of estate signing to be able to ask for a review because, you're face to face with them and you can say, well, I'm going to text you the link right now. And it works out real well. We get some reviews just from, if leads sneak through the console pipeline, they're not necessarily a great fit, but we're able to help them. Like we get a lot of people call in that, oh, I got a $5,000 car that I need to collect. And I'm like, well, we may not be a good fit, but did you pay for a funeral bill? Oh yeah, I paid, $9,000 for a funeral bill. Well, go fill out and send a credit refusal and I'll ask for a review and that works. So some of it is just finding that right time, but it can be tricky. I think the most effective strategy is just having some manual outreach and then some tactful, gentle follow-up from a human person rather than a robot. But the more other stuff you've automated, the easier it makes to have those personal review follow-ups. I know some people, I think Marco Brown has done this, incentivize team members to get Google reviews and kind of celebrate it within the firm internally and kind of create internal competitions. Like how many reviews can you get for the firm? Building a culture around reviews where from the first day you're talking about reviews with your team members and how important those are and just kind of building that perspective into the culture of the firm, I think can help too. But that's kind of my thought on it.
Yeah, I saw one of Marco's posts on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago about that. And I thought, oh, so we did implement some internal changes based upon that to try something new. And so everybody is, it's one of our KPIs, we do weekly KPIs. So it's one of our on that. And so kind of does promote. I think we're getting close to the end here. So we did talked about our close for our podcast and providing, and maybe we'll call it the tech tip of the day or whatever we want to call it going forward. But what's a good tech tip to kind of share with everybody and hopefully help them automate some stuff on their end?
Sure. And so one of my favorite, in much detail, and we'll talk about it in another episode, is kind of the implementation of artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and Claude into your workflows. A lot of people see it as, oh, I can write some marketing content. That's cute. But really the power of those tools is in integrating them into your automated workflows. So like, if you're using Zapier or Make, finding intelligent places to intermingle intelligence into the workflow, like something that can make a decision or make an assignment. So what my tip would be is to check out ChatGPT in Zapier, their action node, and start thinking about how you could use it. Like, well, maybe we get a court email. Maybe I want somebody to read it and I don't want that somebody to be a person. I want it to be a robot. Well, there you go. Think about those places in your firm where, you have a junior associate or a low-level person or an administrative staff person doing a job. just start brainstorming. Could this be done by an AI? And if so, how can I make that happen? That'd be my tip for the week. Start thinking AI.
I know that, like I said before at the very beginning of the podcast, I think, at least in my own mind, you're light years ahead of me when it comes to ChatGPT and AI. And that's something that I'm working on kind of developing or getting into. But I think that's a great tip. For mine, you're going to be this is the way the podcast is going to work, is that you're the AI expert and I'm going to be the kind of the dumbing it down expert, right? So my tech tip of the week is going to be, it's kind of twofold. First, if you're not using e-signatures to sign representation agreements in your law firm, what are you doing? I know there's Panda Docs. We use DocuSign because we just got hooked into it originally. Panda Docs. I know you use stuff through almost every platform now has even their own e-signature platform within it, right? So use e-signatures and template your representation agreements. So you're clicking a button and it's sending it to the client, the right one, and then they're e-signing it on their phone and it's sending it back to you. And now you have a signed up client. Okay. And then once you have the e-signatures in place, but then take it a step further and create just one sort of triggered process or task flow or something that happens after that representation agreement is signed, right? You send it out, they e-sign it, and then immediately something else happens, right? Go into Zapier, connect your e-signature platform account to whatever you want to happen. So for us, we have representation agreements. We have lots of different Zaps, and I'm excited to talk about just a full episode on Zaps, right? And Zapier. But
Yeah.
we have two examples are when a client signs a rep agreement, their information is pushed into QuickBooks. So it starts a new customer in QuickBooks, which then syncs obviously with some other billing systems that we use as well. So that's one just quick, easy thing. Hey, let's tell another system that there's a new client here, right? Another example would be signing a specific type of representation agreement, sets up an automated payment plan through ChargeOver where it creates a subscription, a new customer, and then pushes an invoice to them for our clients that use a payment plan for that particular case. So two examples of my firm, like I said, just get e-signatures implemented and then just set up one sort of trigger. Once you set that first trigger up, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. What else can I trigger? And then you start going down the Zapier path of automation.
Yeah. There's no going back. Once you zap, you can't go back. All right, John. Well, it was a blast talking today. It was fun talking tech. I look forward to our future episodes and appreciate your tip of the week. And everybody, we will see you next week. Until next time.
See everybody next week.